484,550 points currently is the #1 ranked in the global leaderboard. And you know what he's getting for that other than his KRISK? 10 charms, 2 legendary books, and 3 epics. Now, the second place person, 418,402, 381, 358, 355, etc., etc., etc. How did we actually get to this place in the game? How did we get into a position where we're spending thousands of dollars, 500,000 champion training points? I remember when 22,000 points for a champion training event in order to get a fusion made major drama in the game. And here we are staring at 484,000 and people are doing it with a smile. Well, we're going to break it down. There's some psychological tricks that Plarium uses, or really any mobile game uses, to get you to be able to commit into this type of stuff. And we're going to use some, well, you know, I'll show you here. We're going to be using some data to kind of break it down and talk about it a little bit. Now, the first thing I want to discuss is that this video is going to be a little bit longer, so you're going to want to sit through all of it because I'm going to try to do a thorough job covering this entire thing. It's a little bit more than just the sunk cost fallacy, and I actually think this is probably the best example of what I would call a predatory game mode that we have in Raid Shadow Legends. I'm not a big proponent of using the word predatory for games because I feel like we're adults and we choose our own actions. However, by the end of this video, I think you understand why I would agree with that assessment for the definition of this event. Now, first and foremost, you're going to need to understand sunk cost fallacy to be able to understand exactly how this tournament works. So let's think of it this way. If the person in first place is the only person going to get a KRISK, and the person in second place has put 90% of the effort into getting that KRISK that the person in first place has done, the person in first place has two things going on. He's sweating because he feels like he already owns that KRISK. That's something called the endowment effect, where you feel like when you have ownership of something, even if it's the same product, looking at two items that are identical, if you believe you own one, you will value it factually higher than the other, meaning the KRISK in which you already think you own is more valuable to you than this KRISK you believe you could potentially gain. Meaning, the person in second place feels the heat less than the person in first place, unless what happens is that person in second place got knocked out of first place. And this is where we get into what we call the well-war spirals, where we see these large numbers. Because of this, what happens essentially is, in the beginning, somebody is going to, you follow any of these examples. Let's say cognitive dissonance. They don't really understand currently what's going on in the tournament. They do not believe they're going to have sunk cost fallacy happen to them. Okay, you move forward here, they try some efforts to recuperate their losses, and now they have commitment to sunk cost. Okay, so like I put in $1,000 or whatever in this KRISK tournament, the guy next to me put in $1,100. Well, another $100 would save me my $1,000, basically, right? Now, how do they continue this sunk cost fallacy? Well, there's a few different ways they can do it. There's something called the Optimism Bias, which is something that effectively tells you as a human, you tell yourself that things are going to be okay. The correct outcome will happen if I continue. So you can continue dumping resources in, even though it's factually impossible for you because the other person maybe has more resources you're not aware of. There's the framing effect as well. And for the ones that I don't have a good grasp of, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the definition here. Framing effect is a cognitive bias where people decide on options based whether the options are presented with positive or negative connotations. Example, as a loss or as a gain. People tend to avoid risk when the negative frame is presented, but seeks risk when a positive frame is presented. AKA, I have a chance to get a KRISK is more appealing to the person than I have a chance to lose the KRISK. That is the endowment effect we were talking about earlier here, okay? So you can start, I need you to understand these concepts in order to understand the point that we're driving home at. And to be fair, it's not that complicated of a point that we're driving home at. But if we follow the flow chart, it's basically as simple as being able to look at this flow chart and figure it out. However, let's talk about the actual tournament mechanics of the game. So how it works in a champion training event is at the higher point level, you're effectively just dumping money into the game. You're just leveling up stuff you probably don't need, ascending stuff, booking stuff, what have you, okay? It's a resource dump, much akin to the way clan versus clan is a resource dump as well. And for that reason, when you have these high points of numbers, they are effectively just wasting resources. You're spending something. Let's use the word they're spending something, okay? So they feel like money assets, whatever, has already been used. Okay. And then you have that person who comes in and takes it away from them, triggering all the psychological tricks we had before. And we end up in this loop of whales battling each other and going from basically positive framing to endowment effect, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And they're both within the capsule experiencing the sunk cost fallacy together, if you can understand my point. In the reality, since it's game theory, you should be able to get together and decide, sort of like prisoner's dilemma, that we're not going to play the game. And all you have to do is say, one of us will do 1 point, one of us will do 0 points, the rest of us will save all of our money, time, and effort. Now, that's not possible in a game where we don't really have perfect communication or control over your tournaments. That's why Plarium purposely puts together brackets where people are more likely to spend money. If you look at my bracket, as everyone knows, I've spent $16,000 on the game. I say it a billion times, but even though I've spent that amount of money, I'm in a lower bracket. Other people who are continuing to spend money, playing the game more active, are going to go into higher brackets. Well, why is that fair? Why does the people that spend more money need to compete with other people that spend more money? Well, because they're more likely to fall for these same type of psychological traps that they've already been falling for because they've been in the larger pool of spenders already. So you can target people over some prize they want, like KRISK, and you can target these people, put them all in a room together, and force them to fight continually over sunk cost fallacy. When have you ever gone to a car auction, okay? And at the auction, every time you bid, the money's gone. So it's like, I bid $10,000, 10 grand down, it's gone. Now the other guy next to you votes 11 grand, okay? Oh, I bid 11 grand, his 11 grand's gone. So the 11 grand. Now the auctioneer just made $21,000 and you lost $10,000 and don't have a car, and that guy spent $11,000 and does have a car. That doesn't sound like a very good deal for anyone except the auctioneer. So I would ask yourself one question when you go to spend money or you get committed to this, or you find yourself falling prey to these kind of concepts. Who's really winning? Yeah, you might get a KRISK, but are you the who's the auctioneer in this tournament example? And if it didn't work on all of us, would there be a different kind of tournament to get a KRISK? Would they try a different type of psychological trick? Game theory is all about the fact that the people playing the game can break the game if they all choose to. However, that doesn't really happen in mobile games. We all log in, we play the game, we see what event's going on, we go for it. You get the KRISK, you don't get the KRISK, you get some content out of it, who knows. But the predatoriness that we were talking about earlier is in fact there with this tournament. And it is a little bit disgusting. And it is a little bit sad to see all these numbers up there. And man, I bet Plarium loves the cash they're raking in. I'm not gonna get bitter over the money they're making off of it, but I do think it's important to at least understand that they understand the way the human brain works.